Today, we want to talk about how you can work with medical professionals, in particular, how you can get the best outcome while working with them. Some of you might already be working with medical professionals for various issues, for other issues not related to sleep. You'll benefit from today's module. Others who are actually working with medical professional about energy and sleep challenges, you will also benefit from this module. I want to share with you some of the experience I've learned over the last 11 years and hopefully help you avoid a lot of pain and heartache and get the result that you're looking for faster. Okay, are you ready to begin? Let's begin. All right, what are we going to cover today? Today we're going to cover my mom's medical emergency and the learning that we got from there. All right, I'm going to tell you what happened to my mom about 11 years ago, what we learned along the journey, and how this can actually help you get best outcome while working with medical professionals. We're going to cover some of your choices when taking those lessons, and what choices do you have when you work with complex sleep challenges, when you do require medical intervention. We'll talk about how you can actually adopt those approaches successfully. And finally, we're going to finish up with some action, as we always do. We want to put this into action so that you can get benefit. Okay? Ready to begin? Okay, so this story is quite personal to me. My mom raised me on her own. My dad left us when I was quite young, around 10 years old. And we came to Australia from an island called Taiwan. And the challenge with that is my mom didn't know the language very well, so she really struggled. And when my dad left, I haven't seen my dad for about, let's say, 9 years. But it was a struggle. So we didn't have a lot of money. She had to work 2 jobs, 3 jobs at times to make ends meet. And she meant the world to me. She raised me, and one day I got this dreaded phone call when I was at work. And my mom ended up in hospital. I got the phone call, and she had a stroke. They discovered that she lost her speech. She wasn't able to speak, and something's wrong, and that's why we called the ambulance and took her to hospital. And the thing is, I was living in a different city. It's about 13 hours drive away, so it's a real worry. The first thing I did is I dropped everything, took a plane, and got there. And when I see her, she was, let's just say she was in a bad state. She had a stroke, and it was caused by a condition known as atrial fibrillation. If you don't know what that is, just imagine your heart beating 1,000,000,000 miles an hour, beating so hard it feels like it's going to pop out of your chest, and you can't do anything about it. You can't talk. You can't imagine the suffering. So that's what my mom had. Now at the time, because it was heart condition, so we had a cardiologist and we saw a neurologist for her stroke, and the conclusion was her atrial fibrillation can't be cured. It can only be managed. It's a progressive disease that you just have to take these drugs for the rest of her life. So she was prescribed with some blood thinners, some cholesterol drugs, lowering drugs, statins. Then she was prescribed some basically arrhythmia drugs. Now, for her, if the drug works, okay, cool, that's a good start. But it didn't. Not only didn't it work, it created a lot of problems for her, a lot of side effects. So she was feeling tired. Her face turned yellow. And her heart was still every so often just coming with the atrial fibrillation, and it was just not alive. And when we challenged our doctor basically said that's just the way it is. There's nothing we can do. Just have to live with it. Suck it up, essentially. That's why I heard. We were just not accepting that. Like, she was on the verge of killing herself. She just thought it was not worth living, and she thought she could die at any time. I wasn't able to accept that. So I took her into my home, own hand. I basically challenged the doctor. I don't believe you. I'm going to find solutions for myself. And I'm going to see where this is going to take her. And we found a really good doctor. Her name is Dr. Jennifer Hunter. And when I first met her, her humbleness shined through. She's what we call integrative doctor, integrative medicine doctor. In some states in the US, they call them orthomolecular physicians, where what they do is they practice a holistic way of looking at the human body. So they're medical professionals, so fully certified, board certified doctors, but they happen to see the connection between brain, heart, lifestyle, sleep, and nutrition, all the psychology. They see the big picture. But we work with her, and she said, "Just call me Jennifer." Okay, never had that. Never had a doctor who said that. But she helped mom realize is that she's actually, through the test, found a lesion in her esophagus. And the lesion is actually in a spot that's actually very close to the vagal nerve. Now, vagal nerve is actually related to your autonomous nervous system, and it's related to a circuitry that regulates the heartbeat. So it turns out that her heartbeat problem was actually related to that lesion. And with further investigation, this is actually quite a long journey. It turns out that it was caused by irritable bowel syndrome. So her IBS was causing acid reflux, and the acid reflux went up and basically created a lesion, a cut, because of the acid. And that triggers the nerves damage, and the nerve damage triggers the atrial fibrillation, and the atrial fibrillation triggers the stroke. Complicated enough for you? There's more. It turns out her IBS was triggered by stress. Whenever she's feeling really stressed, or scared or anxious, it triggers the IBS, which triggers a reflux, and you know the pattern. Now, we spend a lot of time looking at stress in the earlier module, and this is why there's cascading consequences. And lastly, it was her mental attitude towards what's going on, the divorce, looking after me, the stress of working multiple jobs, trying to make ends meet in a foreign country where she doesn't know the language well. It was just her reaction. So stress, and going through all this sequence, the investigation took us years, right? Took us years to find out that, well, ultimately it's her mental attitude that created the stress created the IBS created the acid reflux, which creates the lesion, which creates the heart disease, which leads to the brain stroke. So we worked on everything. So for IBS, we work on digestion, we work on breath work to help with stress management, we work on psychology, spiritual connection with God, with the church, with the community. We work on the holistic factor, and that's how we are able to make some progress. And we learned a few things along the journey. This is what we learned, and I hope this is going to help you and save you a lot of pain. First, doctors make mistakes, right? So initially, when the doctor was prescribing these drugs, and he proclaimed that this is incurable, it's a progressive illness. Well, he was wrong. I'll tell you why he was wrong. But he wasn't. His prediction didn't turn out to be true. Okay, so they can make a mistake. And the other thing I want to show you is that according to data, an estimated 225,000 people each year die from some form of medical malpractice. In fact, it's the third most likely cause of death. We think COVID, we think pandemic, it's killing a lot of people. Medical malpractice, medical mistakes. 225,000 people die, not just harm, die. Okay, so doctors make mistakes. All right. The other thing is, doctors like to blame you when they don't know something. They like to see you as a problem. So when I challenge the doctor about the drugs, whether we should try something out or well, what about alternative? Maybe we can go with some natural alternative. They would dismiss it. They will basically say, their attitude is, how dare you even think about, you can make suggestions. Just do what's prescribed in a treatment plan, and I know this. Well, looks like they don't. And they don't like it. They like to blame you. When things don't work, when things are prescribed, you must not be following the treatment plan. You must not be taking their advice. That's their reason. And they ignore evidence for things that do work for you when they don't understand it. So acupuncture and some herbal supplement made mom feel better. But the doctor just basically said, don't take it. Don't take it. Just take what I told you. Well, look, it made her feel better, right? Just make sure it's not dangerous. But they're just completely different because they don't know, they don't understand, and they won't dismiss anything that they don't understand. We also learned that the medical system sees body parts. So we're seeing 3-4 specialists at one time. We're seeing our local GP, a neurologist, a cardiologist, a gastroenterologist, whatever you call it, right? The gastro doctor. We're seeing all those things at the same time, trying to piece it together. Because the thing is, they related, and when do they actually talk to each other? When does the neurologist talk to a cardiologist, talk to a gastrosurgeon, talk to a GP? They talk through messages. You might as well use smoke signal. Communication between them is terrible, so they can't see the relatedness and how things are connected. And that's when I realized the medical system loves to see you in parts of the body rather than as a human being. And we own the consequence. So when we follow advice, it didn't work. We just blindly followed because we were told to trust the doctor, and we own the consequence. Mom was sick, she was suicidal, she was suffering terribly, we're not getting an outcome. So working with a real doctor, as someone who is a true healer with a sense of humbleness and wanting to help, we are able to fix a lot of things. But throughout this journey, dealing with all the conventional medical establishment, this is what we learn. And if we just follow what they tell us to do, we own the consequence, not them, not the doctors. So what eventually happened after extensive work with our doctors, with various specialists, specialists that care, they're not following convention, they follow and respect what works. And what works is evidence-based, and that is the only thing that matters. Whether they understand it or they don't care. And Mom was able to fully recover from a so-called progressive illness. Apparently it can only be managed. Well, the doctor's wrong. She's free from atrial fibrillation. It's like saying Alzheimer's is curable, or diabetes. You know, all these so-called, how many of these so-called progressive illness that can only be managed, it actually can be reversed, can be fixed. Multiple sclerosis, right? God forbid. Now, and this is the thing, that like science is constantly evolving, it's constantly changing. Mom recovered, and she's healthier and fitter and feels better than before she had a stroke. She got her speech back, she's able to get her full movement of her body, and she's better than before she had a stroke, which speaks for itself. That's 11 years ago. She felt better than 11 years ago. Amazing, right? And this is what, when you take power into your hand, when you take ownership, this is what you can do. And why I'm sharing this with you is because sleep is also complicated. It may not be as serious as having atrial fibrillation and stroke and all these things, but sleep is just as complicated, and that's why you're here. It's simple, you would have already fixed it already. And sleep is a complicated issue of psychology, spirituality, biology. It's all connected, and that's why I want to share this story with you, because you've come to two choices. When you work with two medical professionals, this is what I recommend. These are the choices that you have so that you can get the best possible outcome with your medical intervention. All right, so what can you do? Your choices. You have two choices. First, a really good choice, like we did, is find a big picture doctor. They call them integrative medicine practitioners or functional medicine practitioner. As I said, in some states, orthomolecular physicians or practitioners. So orthomolecular is some of the older description of that tradition, but these doctors are board registered doctors. They fully trained, except that did a lot more training to see the interconnection of psychology and biology, and majority of them basically were started off as conventional medicine doctors and suffered some chronic illness, some mysterious illness, and therefore didn't work, and decided to go and investigate and challenge the status quo. So these are the true innovators. And if you have a really complex, persistent sleep problem or energy issue, like really bad energy issues, or just feeling chronic fatigue or like really bad mood swings, it's worthwhile seeking out something like that to help you, because they're professional who can prescribe all the tests required. And if you think about it, it's like or like one-stop shop. They talk to the individual, they know how to use the individual specialist, and it require less knowledge. You just engage them and they look after it all. And so they can solve really complex issues which requires like fairly dramatic medical intervention. I highly recommend that you seek these doctors out, particularly if you're having other chronic illnesses like heart disease, high blood pressure. This is where really medical professional intervention is required. Trying to do it yourself isn't that recommended. The downside of those doctors are generally quite expensive. Like they're specialist pricing, they're difficult to find the right doctor with the right attitude. And lastly, they can take quite a bit longer because it takes a long time to be able to see them. Now, the other alternative, which also work, is great if it's not, you're having sleep issues, you're suffering, you've been having a lot of trouble finding the right solution, but it's not to the state where it's like a medical emergency, or you're not suffering from significant other illnesses. Like I said, like where I recommend seeing a medical professional. In this case, the pros of this approach is that you have choices and flexibility. This is where this approach is about taking the big picture, owning that big picture. So you become almost that holistic, functional doctor. You're taking that perspective, but you're not necessarily doing it all on your own. And it can actually help you become more empowered. You feel empowered and armed with the knowledge so that you can make your own conscious choices of what you want to do or what you want to avoid. Rather than delegating that to a functional med doctor, you're taking on that ownership and responsibility, and it gives you choices in terms of where you want to invest your budget and time. Yep. So a lot of flexibility, and side effect is also help you and teach you how to look after your family and your friends with the same approach, because this is a more of a mindset of owning the big picture. And the cons, I suppose, it does require a level of personal effort and education. You do need to learn and be curious and want to find out. It don't have a lot of support. You don't, like there's no really good training except this one, which I'm gonna tell you a little bit about. But it can be confusing what's true and what's not. And I'm gonna give you a technique to help you see through the lies of promotion and medical establishment, as well as basically various solutions out there. So these are the two approaches. Which one do you take? Well, it's really up to you. In my mind, my recommendation is that where you have serious medical illness, like Mom had such a serious illness, obviously it's best if you can afford it, find a medical professional that cares, that takes the holistic big picture view, who will help you work with the body parts doctor. I call them the neurologists, and then they get the big picture while factoring psychology, factoring mindset, sleep, supplements. They can do all that and help you piece it together and work with you on that. where your condition is, it's like maybe you just feel less energy, you feel frustrated with a low quality sleep, but you are reasonably functional. It just, this is a problem you want to work through. You can take the big picture approach and start there and work there, and where required, escalate to option one. So that's what I recommend. But what does that look like to take either? So how do you actually find, if you need that medical professional, how do you find it? Make sure you interview the doctor like you're the boss. Ultimately, you're paying the bills, right? So interview them, right? Ask them questions, ask them about their approach, ask them, and if they're not willing to entertain that, they're probably not the best doctor for you. The big ego is what makes the medical, it's what gets in the way of medical correctness. Egos blind you, right? Blinds, no matter how good you are, your ego can blind you, so they can make bad decisions. So interview them, right? Talk to them. Are they open to your suggestions? If you look up, hey, there's a series of blood tests I think will really be worthwhile considering, since this is what I found out, they affect sleep and energy. Would you mind running them? Are they open to that? Right? If we say, hey, I thought taking some melatonin and vitamin D3 will be good. Would you work with me to help me integrate that? Would they do that? Are they open? Are they open to be wrong? Right? If they, for example, my wife was getting some blood tests, and I suggested, hey, you didn't put testosterone level in your test. That's really important for women as an energy level, even though it's a male hormone, but women also have it. The functional medicine doctor said, yep, great idea. Let me add it. Yep. Are they open to that? They missed something you suggested, they just say, okay, yep, my bad. Good suggestion, added that. Or do they say, no, I don't think you need it? Do they dismiss you? Are they open to be wrong? Do they listen? So always think about doctors who are just telling you stuff all the time, but they're not willing to listen. So that's how you find a good big picture doctor. Be ready to fire your doctor. If your doctors are not willing to do that, be ready to say, okay, no, I don't think you can help me. Go and find someone else. Ultimately, bad doctors can do more harm. We saw how many malpractice, how many deaths caused by medical malpractice. So much so it's the third most common cause of death. Think about that. It can cause more harm. Take ownership of your outcome. So taking ownership is ultimately knowing that you do have a choice. The doctors like to think that you don't have a choice. They like to say they're the only one and only person who can tell you the gospel of how you should live. No, you have a choice. They are making suggestions. Even the prescription is a suggestion. You still have a choice whether you follow that or not, because ultimately you own the outcome of what you choose to do or not to do. So you have a choice. You have a choice to try, and you have a choice to ask questions. And if they're not willing or receptive, you can choose not to follow or find a second opinion. Always you can choose trying what works, even if they don't endorse it. If it helps you, it's still your choice whether you want to try it. A good doctor will take your opinion into consideration, work with you. They'll make sure that it's not dangerous. It's not gonna harm you. Or if it does, they tell you, but they leave the choice up to you because they empower you. You own the outcome. So take ownership of the outcome, and that's how you get the best outcome when working with a medical professional. Now, where you don't have the money, or maybe your condition is not that serious, you can potentially take this big picture approach. And what that looks like is learn the system and use the specialists for their speciality, knowing what they're good at. You can pick them, and knowing their weaknesses, you can use them appropriately. So this course, the Energizing Sleep System, will help you with that. Will arm you with a ton of knowledge of what to ask for, what to check for, and you can work with individual doctors who are, maybe they're not the proper big picture doctor. They're still your local GP, but they're nicer version of your local GP who's open, receptive, open to being wrong, wanting to work with you on suggestions. So some of the things you might ask them, for example, work with a local doctor for blood testing, right? Because they can write the script to get blood tests, to apply for blood tests. Now, what I've listed here for you is actually a good set of blood tests to be asking for if you're having energy issues or sleep problem. All of these, it's like hormones, vitamin D status, the thyroid function test, complete blood count, which is the basic inflammation, blood sugar regulation test. These are all fundamental to your energy, and these tests are a good place to ask. Work with your local doctor. You don't need to go to a holistic doctor to get there. If you have a good local doctor, you interview them, and they're great, and they're willing to listen, you can make those suggestions, and they can prescribe that. So you save a lot of money working with a local doctor rather than a specialist doctor. Get a coach to help with the mindset if your habit is getting in the way of you forming good sleep. And that's why I put in coaching as part of this program, because it's really helpful with forming new habit in terms of for healthy sleep. You can get a health coach for education. You learn about supplements. You learn about various blood tests that's useful, and that's what part of this course is going to help you learn all that. It's got health coaching aspect. It's got sleep habit coaching aspect, and I'll show you the tests you can run. And you can potentially join church for spiritual connection or community. So this is what it looks like. When you take own the big picture, you basically understand all the elements you need, and you just find the people that you need. If you're really good at setting good habits, you probably don't need a mindset coach, for example, and therefore you can save a little bit of money. You push and pull what you need, and push away what you don't need. That's how it works. Another really useful mindset is take a result first approach, and belief and understanding is secondary. So really, result first means whatever you try doesn't work. That's the proof in the pudding. The proof is in the pudding. Doesn't work. If I drink some holy water and I feel more relaxed and I sleep better, great. Why do you care why it works? If the harm is next to zero, it's water, and maybe you pay $5 for it. I don't know, maybe waste a bit of money, but it works. It could be a placebo effect. Doesn't matter. It works. Take that approach, because we don't have enough time to waste working everything out. There's a lot of things we do not quite understand, but just know that gravity is reality. You jump down a cliff, you're going to fall to your death. Before you discover gravity as a science and what creates gravity, which is mass, you don't understand it, but you still need to know that it has an impact. So the impact is more important than understanding. Just make sure you prioritize right and that's part of the mentality, owning the big picture, and learn where to look for trusted science. I'll show you some sources for that. So you're not kind of like a wind, but left or right, rely on mass media for your health education or sleep education. Some big YouTuber coming with a sleep hack. Yeah, don't be blown by the wind left, right, and center. I'll show you some place for trusted research. And lastly, understand what it's like to think critically. Some of the tactic used by big pharma, big food to trick you, or some snake oil salesman selling your magical solution, what techniques they use. When you see them, you can see through their lies, and you'll be able to make your own call whether something is trustworthy or not. Okay, so that's what it's like to own the big picture. And whether you do work with a medical professional or not, whether you work with a functional medicine doctor or not, having the big picture is always a really good foundation, because then you less rely on someone else to get it right. Remember, you own the outcome. Yeah. So how much control do you want to give away? owning the big picture is always a great idea. And ultimately, we took that approach because our specialist wasn't given that. We did work with a medical doctor, the holistic medicine doctor, but it is something that with a big picture approach, I challenged her on some of these what she was thinking, and we got the best possible outcome. And that's how we were able to help my mom fully recover. Hope you can learn from that. Okay, so where can you find trusted research? Here, I've got some links. So in the top one is basically my notes. Okay, I'm giving you all my notes. Notion is where I putting all the trusted research resources. I list them for basic where they practice scientific rigor. So science is always changing, evolving, and some people who want to be right all the time, that's unscientific. So I look for people who are humble, who's always learning, who's open to being wrong, who listens, who loves challenges, and who always self-critique and continuously learn. So I collected some resources over there. You can go and check it out. Yeah, some really good website for information about general health related information. Examine.com will tell you all this evidence behind the various popular supplements or popular treatment or popular drugs. So they go through all the research paper and see how much is in consensus. So CoQ10 for energy, there's quite a lot of consensus on that for improving energy, right? So it shows consensus and how many papers, or are they all in place? There's no consensus. So it gives you a heck of a lot of information about any particular supplements or treatment. You can look up valerian, you look up CoQ10, you can look up red yeast rice extract, all the various things that help for information about. Consumerlab.com, what they do is they take the latest, so they basically go to the shops and buy for given category, let's say spirulina, great for detox. They took it off all the shelf, all the popular brands from Walmart, from iHerb, or wherever the big retail shop is. They don't get it from the supplier, they get it from the shop, same shop that you and I buy. And they test them for heavy metals, for toxins, for pesticides, and also are they accurately reflecting what's on the label. So great website for knowing what brands to buy and trust, which are the best value. Labdoor is very similar concept as lab testing, and Linus Pauling Institute has a lot of great information about various treatment and cutting edge innovative science about being health, and there's a whole bunch of other resources I won't go into, but they're great channels to check out on the internet. Okay, so been doing a lot of talking. We're gonna finish very soon. Okay, now understanding critical thinking. Now what I want to show you is basically have a look at this slide, and in this playback just pause the video, have a look. There's a lot of bad science around, and if you rely on mass media for your learning about what's good for you, what's bad for you, just be aware there's a lot of bad, terrible science that's basically put in the front headlines purely to get people to read and buy papers, but it's not going to good work for you. So look for sensationalized headings, look for misinterpreted results, conflict of interest, right? Tobacco companies sponsored ads that say smoking doesn't cause cancer for years and years, yeah? But they hid behind front companies, right, to justify. For example, there's an American Hydration Society. It's funded by Big Food, who's interested in selling Coca-Cola and Pepsi and soft drink and sugary soft drinks. Can you see the conflict of interest? So they will sponsor research that shows a positive, right, or minimize the harm from sugary drinks, and trying to paint a picture it's part of a healthy diet. So beware of conflict of interest. Lots of ways of how science can be misinterpreted. Cherry pick result. Only pick one that conforms your belief. to prove a point. Now, if you take that approach, you can pretty much prove anything. There was a study graph I showed the other day which shows when the weather gets hot, so do the amount of homicides. So does that mean, and so does the amount of ice cream consumption, and they've really remarkably aligned. So does that mean people who eat more ice cream are more likely to commit murder? Right? If the thing is, I can pick that and say, ice cream increases homicide. But you know that's ridiculous, right? But people love to read that thing. That's what cherry picking and confusing correlation of result with the causation, which is there's a correlation, but does that mean ice cream causes murder and homicide? It's just ridiculous, right? So this is an exaggerated example of some bad science. When you learn and understand this, you can protect yourself. You can protect your mind from bad data. And this is a lot to cover, so I'm not going to go in depth on like giving you a tutorial on critical thinking. I just want you to know that it is there, and this is part of how you arm yourself to be a better patient when working with medical professional. Always question, always challenge what you presented with, and this will help you. Okay, your action for today. Whew, that's a lot of information to digest. Your action for today. So, if you're working with a medical professional, or you're thinking about working on with a medical professional, or reflect the medical care you received so far and decide what approach you want to take. Do you need a system-based healer? If you're working with specialists, maybe that's what you need. Or you really want to say, I'm going to own this system and integrate specialists as required. Doing this course, doing this challenge with me is part of owning the system. You will learn about biology, you will learn about psychology, you will learn about a lot of things that will help you create energized sleep. And you can pull in the specialist as required, so you're already halfway there. But if you do decide to integrate holistic systems healer, you know, now that you're aware they're there, you can potentially recruit one. If you've got a lot of other medical issues that you really need to work all together with. So, and as a reminder, I can't emphasize this, if you have a medical condition, seek medical attention. So I'm not here to say don't talk to a doctor, but what I am here is giving you the information, arming you with information so you can get the best possible outcome to achieve your goal of having extremely good vitality and awesome energized sleep. Okay, so that is a lot of material to cover. Now, if you got any questions about the blood test that I recommend for diagnosing with a sleep problem and why I recommend those blood tests, bring those questions to the coaching group, and I'll be more than happy to chat to you about that. There will be future modules where we do go into a little bit more detail. I want to arm you with the information so you can actually go and work with a medical professional. You can explain why you're interested in these, and I'll tell you how you can convince them to write the script for you to get the test, and so that you can look at the result and own the outcome yourself. And that way you will save a lot of money without having to, and get the same outcome without having to go to spend a lot of time, money with these medical professionals. All right. Any questions? Please bring it to me in the coaching group, or just reach out.